I normally don't read reviews when we do this show because I don't want my opinion to get clouded too much. But since we switched to moving away from horror, we've started reviewing movies at least the last 2 weeks, um, which are kind of they're more analyzed than horror movies or the typical horror movies that we've been reviewing.
Oh, they're
They're
more mainstream, yeah.
I say going beyond mainstream because Fast and the Furious is mainstream, but they're more acclaimed. They're more done by auteur directors. There's
Right.
more being said in these movies than are being said in a typical like horror movie or movie
They're
just
quote
there.
unquote quality mainstream movies. How about that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Better than having me go on for another 5 minutes trying to articulate it. But so because of that, I did read a few reviews on like Rotten Tomatoes and those different movie sites, and the praise wasn't completely universal. I'd say most people liked it, fans and critics, but there was a lot of criticism of it being a little too pretentious and a little too long. So I was kind of leery going back into it because I only saw it the one time, and this was going to be my second time. I knew it was a long movie, so I was a little bit apprehensive. I was like, ugh, maybe I won't like this as much. But I don't mind artistic movies, and I thought I didn't. I mean, I could see those opinions being valid, but I didn't find it being too long for my taste. I thought it was good length for the story he was trying to tell. I didn't find it that pretentious. I mean, could you have edited out 20 minutes of this and it wouldn't have hurt it? Sure, but I didn't mind this version of the movie. What were your thoughts on that specifically?
I'm going to agree with you once again. Yeah, I looked at that DVD. I'm like, whoa, 2 hours and 2.5 hours. It actually was like 2 hours and 36 minutes or something like that. I was like, we better get started quick if we want to go to bed tonight. But um, no, as I just sat there and watched it, and I was enthralled by the whole thing. I hadn't seen it since the movie theater either. I didn't remember, I remembered the basic plot, obviously, but I didn't remember a lot about it. But I just sat there very much enjoying it through the whole thing. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to, actually.
Yeah, it's really good. Directed by Alexandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, or the Mexican Terrence Malick. After watching this, is probably how I would view him. Are you familiar with Terrence Malick films?
I know of the name, but
Oh,
off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what else he's done or what he's done. I mean,
okay. Well, that hopefully people are familiar with Terrence Malick. Watching this review will get that joke because Terrence Malick is an incredibly artsy director who does incredibly long films with a high artistic vision that can not only piss off the people watching it, but also a lot of his actors are very annoyed by him because there are certain actors that will work in his movies for long periods of time, and he will either like minimize their roles or he will literally just completely cut them out the movie. He is Alejandro dialed up to 10 as far as artsy and long and uh, non-traditional narratives would go. So but yeah, interesting. Alejandro also did Birdman, which is a pretty good film, and 21 Grams. Those were the other films I saw that he did, and I like those two as well.
yeah, Birdman I saw in the theater. I actually saw it at home too. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit too. And am I not mistaken? Didn't Revenant win Best Picture or DiCaprio won Best Actor? I know that year, but yeah, it was at the very least nominated. I know that.
It got 12 Academy Award nominations, and it won three: Best Director, Cinematographer, and Best Actor for DiCaprio. DiCaprio got nominated five other times, and this was his first win. Alejandro also won a bunch of awards for Birdman as well. So this is he's pretty much like an awards darling type guy. I've tried to watch a few interview clips with him. You think his movies are long and a little vague and a little pretentious? Oh my God, his interviews.
Absolutely questionable. The universe not the emotional certainty of any event, intelligence in a way superior to the intellectual emotion. Everything nature expressed itself by metaphors and interactions that works intellectual or make me.
I honestly couldn't tell you what the hell he was talking about in any of them. He's just very, he's the type of person, if you met him in a party and he started talking to you, you would just like, you'd have that code where you touch your ear for your buddy to like come and grab
Right.
you on the conversation. I like his movies, but his interviews, man, they are pretentious, even though I don't find his movie to be pretentious. Um, I find with this movie, the look of it is amazing. I think the look is far more interesting than what's actually going on in the movie itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking on IMDb, and they have images from the movie too, and they're always these unbelievable looking landscapes with the wildlife and just the nature and everything. It looks spectacular. So it won best cinematography. I don't doubt it.
Yeah. So a few things about the production of this movie. It was shot only using natural light, and that caused the production to really stagnate because there was only a short period of time that you could do that. And being a filmmaker myself, I know in dealing with natural lights, it can screw up your production. Like if you have a certain shot and then there's a cloud that comes in and you want to reverse that shot, then it looks completely different. And also the sun rising and setting, it happens quicker than you think. The sun setting, and you end up losing a lot of hours, and especially where they're shooting in areas where there's no street lights or city lights. When it goes dark, it goes dark. So
Right.
it really constrained the length of time they could shoot during the day and really hampered production. Also, with the production being very slow, the weather changed where they were shooting, and they had to move from Canada to Argentina because the snow started melting in Canada. Um, and they also shot the film chronologically, which cost them a lot of money as well, because where you have a character maybe in a scene early on, like the captain, he's in a lot of the early scenes. He's not there for a big middle chunk of the movie. Then he comes on at the end, holding on to that actor for that length of time and extending production. Whereas if you didn't shoot it chronologically, you can completely get rid of an actor in a very short period of time. Situations like that caused the budget to go from 60 million to 135 million. But surprisingly, for such an artsy film, it actually made a profit and made a lot of money.
Yeah, this was a huge blockbuster, and I think the biggest thing is it's uh, you were right when you said it wasn't universally acclaimed. It was still very highly praised, but it wasn't as high as a lot of the other films are. But it also had a ton of action in it and enough to keep even your non-artsy fans uh, keep their attention.
From what I remember hearing about this movie, it really seemed like a lot of the advertising from it, at least from the studio, was really trying to push hard for DiCaprio to get his first Academy Award win. I don't get why that's such a big deal for people. It's just an award. I'd rather just be a part of a good movie or a movie that makes money. But actors seem really to get, um, you know, that's a real. I guess maybe if I was an actor, maybe I would. Well, I do act in my own movies, but not in movies that would ever get Academy Award nominations. But I just don't get why that's such a
Sorry.
big deal. But um, but yeah, he actually ate a real bison liver in the scene where he was supposed to eat it. I don't know, like what any of that does. I mean, aside from helping you to tell a story when you're trying to win an Academy Award, I don't know if that actually enhances the scene in any way at all. And supposedly he's a vegetarian. And when you hear stories like that, I even wonder if it's even true. It could be just something that's said to just, make Academy Award voters vote for him. Because I remember Black Swan, I think it was. There was a big push saying Natalie Portman did a lot of her own dancing. And this was a time where they were trying to get her a nomination. but the actual dancer that did most of the dancing for her, like her stunt double, was like, hold up, I was on set, I did like the majority of her dancing. Like, why are you people trying to pretend I don't exist? And a lot of this stuff sometimes is just made up to help actors get awards or to, enhance the movie in some way to like viewers to make them want to see it more.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I could see myself in that situation. I might take a bite of that bison liver too, just for shock value. That's just the kind of thing I would do. And I don't doubt that he did it, because I look back, he did Django Unchained a couple of years ago, and there's a scene in there where he cuts his hand, which wasn't in the script. It was an accident on set, but he just kept going and going with the line, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, I don't doubt that he did, but who knows? It
Who
doesn't make
knows?
much difference to me. I didn't watch that thing and thinking, oh man, he's eating a real bison liver. I didn't think that at all, but okay.
Yeah. Or it could be that you're also hearing another story from Django Unchained that also isn't true. But like you said, it ultimately doesn't affect your enjoyment. But I think it's just fun stories that people use to just enhance the movie or just to get people talking about it and stuff like that. Who really knows? Um, let's talk about DiCaprio's character. He doesn't do a lot of talking in the film. A lot of the story, supposedly this is based on a true story, which we've talked about in previous episodes, how much of it is actually true. I did do some reading up on it. They
So
did
did
make
I.
up a lot of stuff that's not true. He didn't come back to kill anyone. He did happen to survive. But you have to wonder, this happened in 1823. And in the early 1800s, people could die from like a cut, or like from the common cold. There's like so many easy ways to die. I question like, eh, I don't know. But what are your thoughts on DiCaprio before I get into it too much and his performance?
I thought it was fantastic, but I agree with you that it's hard to believe anybody who was attacked that savagely could possibly survive that even today. I can't imagine. If it's true, it's one hell of a good story.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of embellishing, and yeah, like I said, I touched on the real story. Anyone can go out there and read up on it as well, and even in more detail than I did. I just did enough to cover this review, but it seemed like most of it was made up. There was no wife, there was no kid. He wasn't coming back to kill anyone. I'm sure the bear attack wasn't as severe as they made it out to be.
That was my biggest thought. I was thinking it's probably not that bad. It was probably, well, it can't be good, but it probably wasn't as bad as it was portrayed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did like the part where he used gunpowder and fire to seal the wound on his throat. And by the end of the movie, he's talking. It's like, come on. Like by the end of the movie, what was that? Like maybe a weeks or a month later, like he wouldn't be talking and fighting and up and about. I mean, no, it's a little implausible. Um, but there were some interesting things I felt about DiCaprio and how much he survived in this movie. So it's beyond the bear attack. It's a bear attack. He also survived infection, which is something that could kill people back then. And he was severely wounded. He fell off a waterfall, which we talked about before. Water isn't soft when you're falling from far distances.
No, he went over a cliff also.
He rode a horse off a cliff. Um, he survived hordes of Indian attacks, not once, not twice, but 3 times at point blank range. So they went far above and beyond the bear attack of the source film of what DiCaprio survived in a quest for his revenge. The setup to me felt a little bit kind of Saving Private Ryan-ish, and it
Yeah,
we have a newfound fear of arrows. I had no idea arrows could be that dangerous. Like I remember watching like most of the westerns with Indians I saw were like from the 50s, and arrows did not come off as dangerous or as deadly or as like graphically killing people like they did in the intro of this movie. It was just like, wow. What did you think of the introduction?
Yeah, I hadn't seen anything quite like that before. Usually, like you said, when you're watching, even watching the Lone Ranger or something, an arrow doesn't go through you. You know, these arrows were going through your necks, and I think they went through some bodies too. Usually, what you see on TV is it kind of just sticks in you, and maybe you can pull it out. I don't know. But yeah, it makes me wonder what's real and what isn't. Is that the way it was? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I saw a movie called Throne of Blood, directed by Akira Kurosawa. I'm not sure if you saw that.
No.
But it was a movie where it was Macbeth, basically, I think. Yeah, and at the end he was getting killed by arrows. And Kurosawa had them shoot like actual arrows, but the actor had padding on, but he got shot with like 100 arrows. And like you said, when you normally see stuff like that, it's the tip that goes in, and the rest of the arrow is just sticking out.
Mm.
These arrows are just impaling people like spears. It's just like yikes. It's pretty gruesome. And like I said, it had a very Saving Private Ryan feel, not just in the death toll, but also the way the camera just roamed through the scene. There was no establishing shot, reverse shots. There was no wide shots or close-ups. It was just this camera roaming around through the action. And to me, that made it felt like more claustrophobic, more like it drew me into the scene even more, just the way it was shot as well, not just what was going on in the scene.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that comparison, but yeah, it's both films start off with a major battle and a lot of carnage all over the place. Yeah, you're quite right.
Yeah. So basically, the story is these guys are fur traders, and they were attacked by Indians. 33 of them are killed in that battle. Only a few survive. And I guess DiCaprio's character is a tracker. I'm not sure if they said exactly what he is, but I think that's a term they used back then. And he helped them escape the Indians. And the captain was very grateful of this. So when the bear attack did happen, he was determined to just not like abandon him. He attempted to do a mercy killing, but he didn't really have the heart for it. So he let three of people stay behind, including DiCaprio's son, to stay with him until he died. I'm not sure if that's any better than a mercy killing. If you think he's going to die anyway and you just let him die in pain, rather than just giving him the mercy killing. If in your mind you're resigned to the fact that he's going to die, I don't know if that's necessarily a better death. And then there's a very confusing part to me in that Tom Hardy's character, we'll get into him after this, he basically told DiCaprio, blink if you want me to take you out your misery.
I can muzzle you if you like. Take away the suffering real quick and easy. One ever has to know that you give up. I do that. All you gotta do is blink if you want me to do that.
And it seemed like he did blink. Am I wrong about that? Or did the movie contradict that in some way? Is that what he did?
I was taking that as a blink too. My first thought was that he's not going to blink because he stood there staring for quite a while, not blinking. But then he closed his eyes and he shut them tight. So I take that as a blank. Yeah.
But at the end, DiCaprio said, no, he didn't.
You and me, we had a deal. And on my soul, the Lord, he know what happened out there. That was no deal.
So I don't know. And kudos to him, because naturally your eyes do blink.
Right.
So
that to me told me he at least initially that told me that no, he doesn't want him to do it because he's deliberately keeping those eyes open.
Let's get into Hardy's character. Initially, he seemed like a bit of a shade of gray character, but at the end, he was clearly like the bad guy. But you saw he didn't like Indians, but then they gave him a reason for not liking Indians because he was partially scalped by one. So there was at least a little bit of effort there to show that he wasn't like this just completely generic bad guy. But towards the end, he eventually devolved into one anyway. But his whole deal was, hey, we went out here because they're fur traders. We went out here to get this fur, and it's worth a lot of money. And his deal is like, hey, like, I spent 6 months getting this fur and you guys want to abandon it. You know, I could see him being a little pissed off. Bunch of his buddies die. Most of the people he was working with for 6 months died, and they did it for the money for this fur, and they want to abandon it first. I can see his anger there, and I can see his hatred for the Indians if they scalped him. So I thought that his character had some dimension, but he just kind of devolved into like a generic bad guy towards the end. What do you think about him and his overall performance as well?
I thought his performance was excellent, but to me, his character, I just from the get-go, I just thought he was a prick. You know, maybe he has reasons to be a prick, but I don't know. I don't know if that's always the case because sometimes, you know, I'm thinking back to when I was a youth and I got in trouble a lot, and it seemed like every police officer I met was a prick, and it's like I know why they're pricks because they got to deal with the same people over and over again, constantly lying to them and everything. But I always thought that shouldn't be an excuse. You can at least be a nice human being, not a prick. So that was my take on it. But I thought he played his character fantastically.
He's a great actor. He does have a thing where he seems to mumble a lot in his movies, or like his character doesn't. Even in a situation like Bane, where he's not mumbling, it's hard to find a lot of his performance where you can clearly hear what he's saying.
His voice reminded me of somebody else, and I still, for the life of me, can't think of it. But yeah, no, he had that kind of grovelly. Maybe I was even thinking of last week Jeff Bridges a little bit in True Grit. I don't know. It was just that kind of grovelly. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, yeah, but it just seemed like in a lot of his performance in like Mad Max or in like Bane in the Batman movie with Bane or with this and a few of his other performances, he doesn't really, you know, he doesn't talk a lot in his films. He has a lot of roles where he's just like the silent, powerful guy, and he does have a lot of gravel to his voice, or doesn't necessarily always talk very articulately. Um, as far as his pronunciation, not his performance. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. What did you think of the actual bear scene, or the bear rape, as it was known? It looked pretty realistic, even the second time around. Because the first time around, I was like, wow, this looks great. Watching it this the second time, I was like, all right, let me look for the stunt man. Let me look for the CGI. I thought it came off pretty well. Like even with looking at it critically with scrutiny.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It scared the crap out of me. You know, when you hear that low rumble and you just see this gigantic beast coming towards you, I would be terrified beyond belief. I honestly, you know, I'm assuming it was CGI, but it looked pretty good to me.
Yeah, yeah. Or it could have been like partially maybe a suit for the close-ups or something. But however they did it, they did a great job. Initially, I was like, man, that's it, because the bear actually walked away like I think twice, and then he kept coming back. I was like, yikes, you know, it's like, yeah, this is definitely worth the price of admission, that attack scene.
Bears, grizzly bears, they're not meat eaters. They might eat some fish, but generally they eat berries and things. So, you know, your first instinct is why didn't he eat him? But bears don't do that.
Yeah, I think they made it pretty clear that it was a mother bear there to
Right.
protect her cubs and stuff like that. Yeah. So what did you think of Bridger's character? He's the sidekick for Hardy. It was interesting because they did establish early on, when they were attacked by the Indians very early in the film, where most of the men died, that Hardy did save Bridger's character's life. And then when they had the fight over DiCaprio, like, you know, about leaving him, Bridger held a gun to Hardy, but then Hardy took the gun from him and pulled the trigger. And he was literally willing to kill him. But after that, they weren't buddy buddy, but they were amicable, with each other after that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. What do you think about their relationship and that character?
My take was that he was just intimidated by him. Obviously, we have an older, grizzled man and a young kid practically. I think he was terrified by him, and he's just going to, from that point on, he was just going to do whatever he had to do to get back home.
Yeah. But in all fairness, like Hardy did save his life, so
Mm-hmm.
he should have been indebted to him for that. I wouldn't have pulled a gun on somebody that saved my life, but you had to move on at some point from DiCaprio being wounded and laying down, but I did think it was very sudden.
Yeah, because he really went kind of from, I don't want to say 0 to 60, but 0 to 30, because he hadn't even moved up to that point. So,
Yeah. And a lot of this movie, I guess this is where people who felt the movie was a little too long would be complaining, because at this point, it was just a lot of DiCaprio and maybe the one other Indian character that was helping him out for like 20, 30 minutes of the film, of just watching him eat raw fish and, putting, the gunpowder in his throat and different things like that, and showing how he's surviving and how he's trying to find the camp and get back to Hardy for revenge. Has very little dialogue, very little story. They did throw in a subplot with the French soldiers, which was at least something to get some people talking and some action back into the movie, because the movie did have a long lull at that point. The French soldier subplot I thought was interesting. It obviously plays into the end as well, where he saves the Indian girl from getting raped. Then from there, he gets back to the group and he goes out for his revenge from Hardy. What did you think of the climax and the fighting at the end? I thought it was pretty interesting. I mean, it did show his smarts. Where he, after the captain got killed, he put the tree branch to balance him up, and he switched. So he kind of fooled Hardy there. I thought it was pretty interesting. And obviously at the end, the raped girl kind of played into the end. Where the Indians didn't kill him because she was there. Something you see in a lot of movies, but I thought the climax was pretty interesting. It was a good payoff. You had to have a good payoff for a 2.5 hour movie, or a 2 hours and 36-minute long movie. You had to have a decent payoff. I thought the payoff was worth the wait.
Yeah, I thought it was a fun finish, and I just, again, going back to the cinematography, I just love the look of it. Just the white snow and the water there. I thought it looked fantastic. Yeah, it was a fun fight.
Yeah, like I said, the look, the look of it was better than the content, but the content was good as well. It was just that the cinematography was like by far and away the best element of the film. The shot composition and just the scenery was just amazing. But yeah, I for anyone who hasn't seen it or hasn't seen it in a while, don't be scared off by the runtime. The movie flows pretty easily. I saw it in one sitting. Maybe if I wasn't going to review this, I would have been scared off, because when I did read the reviews, even though I was committed to watching it because we were going to review it, the runtime did scare me. And also the pacing. When you read about the pacing, reading about what happens sounds scarier than actually watching it. But the scenes where DiCaprio is kind of pulling himself together, figuratively and literally, the scenes do work well. Mm-hmm. So, any final thoughts?
Yeah, no. Other than to say, yeah, it was quite enjoyable, and I enjoyed this more the second time around than I did the first time.